Um, Hello everybody, and this is a episode of Nerdflash. We know it's been a while, but I feel like this time we actually have some stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Also, we're slightly changing the format. We might go back to the whole comic-related stuff, but at least for now, considering I work a full-time job now and Tim's trying to find a job, and trying to get everyone together is a pain in the ass, we'll basically try to record whenever we can, whenever we have something to talk about, which at this point is more video games than anything.
Mm-hmm. And recently, also another thing I think we've been having trouble with is talking about stuff when we get together, because it's like, okay, we're going to write some stuff down, but whenever we do, we notice there's like a lot of dead space where it's all like, or maybe one of us would talk more than the other, mainly Tyler would talk more than me, because I would just be all like, yeah, yeah, no, yeah. But we noticed when we do start to talk about stuff and we really get into a conversation, it's whenever we're hanging out outside somewhere. And we'll just start talking about something, an issue, politics, video games, whatever. And we'll just go on and on about it. And it reminded me of that show, for all of you listeners, like 6 of you, of that show, Reviews on the Run, where they would just be in a random place and they would just talk about video games and whatnot. And I feel like that's how that show started. Just two dudes standing somewhere, and then they would just get in a really long conversation. But yeah. So here we are. And one of the things we started talking about was Metal Gear Solid 5. And how it had like 5 years of development, and the gameplay is solid, but the story is very meh. I mean, if you're a new person and you're coming to this game, you'll be like, oh, this is fun, but if you play the game, you'll be all like, oh, is this it? But anyway, we've got stuff to talk about, so we're going to get to it.
What would you want to hit up first? Evolution of gameplay mechanics?
Yeah, actually, let's talk about something recent. Resident Evil is coming to their 25th anniversary, and they released a trailer to a game. Pretty much, you remember Operation Raccoon City, right?
Yeah, actually that was the one game I was thinking about earlier where the gameplay mechanics were actually pretty solid. I mean, the story was shit, from what I've seen, but the gameplay mechanics for the most part were actually pretty solid.
Yeah, well, they're releasing a new game. Let me just whip out the old device, figure out what the new game is called, but I remember watching a trailer for it. And then there was this one Facebook page I was a fan of, and it was like a fan page for Jill Valentine, and
That's
girl,
the female character, right?
yeah, and the girl who was running it was all like, "Oh, I'm so done with Resident Evil. Look at this shit, like, ugh." And it's like, well, it's a spin-off game, so it doesn't really, it's not bound to the rules by Resident Evil. But anyway, we'll get to that point.
Like, I mean, there are a lot of games that do that where you get a spin-off and the gameplay is completely different. But a lot of the times, a lot of people like those spin-off games, or people are like, man, the mechanics in this game are really fucking solid. And they'll adapt them into the new game. Or into the next game in the main franchise, which I honestly don't have a problem with. Because it makes the gameplay better. Because, like you were saying earlier when we were out talking outside, the early Resident Evil games controlled like you were a fucking tank.
Yes.
And in the earlier games, you couldn't really shoot and move. It was shoot, take 3 steps back, shoot, readjust, shoot again. It's like, other people complain about it in some of the later games. It's like, why? That's like day 1 training cop school. Gun, point, move, shoot. If you have to, so that way you're out of the aim of fire. Same in SWAT. Like, one of the first things they teach you is to move with your gun and point and shoot and keep moving. Because if you're standing still, you're a freaking target.
Exactly. And like, especially with zombies, like, slowly walking towards you, you'd think you'd be able to take a couple of steps back. But no, you just stood there and kept firing, while zombies would just mob on you and start gobbling at you.
It's like you had brain damage.
Exactly.
Maybe you had a very early version of the T-virus, and it completely made you basically gave the intelligence of a 3-year-old. Because apparently he couldn't walk and turn. It was like walk, turn left, walk straight, stop, turn, walk straight.
And basically that gameplay was in the first 3 games, and also the spin-off games that came out of it. And we didn't really see an evolution in gameplay until the fourth one that came with the PlayStation 2. And I think one of the reasons for that was because, well, one, you're working with different hardware, you're capable of different things. And think about the version that came out on the Wii, how you were able to freely move and actually move back and stuff. I think you had actually a lot more movement in that one anyway.
Yeah, like, you always see evolution in gameplay, whether you like it or not. Stuff that works in other games, and they notice it works in similar games, they're always going to adapt to it because it works in that game, so why won't it work in this one? Mm-hmm. A big example of that is if we didn't have evolution in gameplay, we wouldn't have Grand Theft Auto 5 as we know it. We'd still be stuck to a top-down shooter a la Expendables for PS3, which was garbage. And if you go back and play Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 now, even compared to a lot of games then, weren't all that great. Basically, you're a little dot, you run around and shoot things, get into a car, drive around, crash because you can't fucking steer worth a shit.
Oh, so, the game I was talking about before where people are like, oh no, but this isn't Resident Evil, there's zombies and shit. It's called Umbrella Corporation. So, you know. Or, I mean, not Umbrella Corporation, Umbrella Corpse. But, the trailer I watched, it looked like a lot of fun. And, like, the comments I'm, like, seeing for it are like, man, it looks like another hype that's gonna turn boring and bland and very quick, like Operation Raccoon City. And, like, people are like, I paid a lot of money for that game. And so, like, well, shit, I guess that's your fault for buying a game.
Before looking into it at all in the gameplay mechanics. Another great example of that was, of gameplay evolution is one of my favorite series, Splinter Cell. You go through the early games, which I recently got a hold of, because the first one I ever played, I played the first, I think it was the first or third one I played originally at a friend's house, a friend at the time's house, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't grasp my head around the controls. And when Conviction came out, I was like, that looks like a pretty neat game, I'll try it out. I haven't played any of them since like the third one. I tried it out, went through the game, and it was a lot more playable. You could run around. If you got seen by someone, it wasn't a bitch to shoot him in the head or try to get away. You could shoot him, run away, and they would try to investigate your last known location, which was fine with me, because it was a lot like other games. Well, I can't think of any games at that time which had mechanics like that. I think Sniper Elite might have been released around the same time. But aside from that, like, aside from the story and how the story sort of progressed, and I didn't mind it too much, but it developed in such a way whereas if you were a newcomer to the series or you couldn't play the straight-up stealth aspect of the game, you were able to jump in and still... and it wasn't like a throw... Like, there was still stuff containing to the original stories of the earlier games, but it wasn't to such an extent where you couldn't jump into the game. It was kind of like a new starting point for people who hadn't played the games to jump in, play the game, get somewhat used to the older controls with some new twists thrown in, and then go back and catch up, which was something I liked. And then with Blacklist, it improved on those more, where you had now 3 ways you could basically play the game without really being reprimanded. You could go in loud and proud and basically turn into a third-person shooter like a la Gears of War. Or you could go in the original way, completely stealthy, don't kill anyone, complete your objective with maybe just knocking people out. Or you could go in and do what I generally did, which was just sneak around, shoot people in the side of the head silently. Problem solved, or knife them, which was my other favorite thing. But afterwards, I kind of went through the old-fashioned way and just tried to get through the game as much as I could without killing people. I mean, yeah, it's Conviction, I loved the story. Blacklist, still liked it, but not as much as Conviction. But again, the gameplay improved to the point where pretty much anyone can play that game and still enjoy the story without being reprimanded for the game. For the gameplay not being able to understand the mechanics. Or, like, if you played any other game that's similar to Resident Evil at this point, and tried to go back and play the original one, you're not getting very far.
No, and if anything, it's going to take you a while to get used to playing something like that.
Where you're basically controlling a human tank.
Yeah.
Or a robot who doesn't know how to do 2 things at once. It's like one of those blonde girls who can't chew and walk.
And, you know...
Actually, no, that's my new favorite way to describe the characters in that game. They're blonde. Actually, I think they both are blonde.
I think only Wesker's blonde.
Yeah. I haven't really played the games. I think I played 2, Or no, I think I played part of 1, I think I played part of 2, and I think I played one of the ones on PS2, and I still couldn't get into it.
People are just going to love that in the comments. It's like, oh, you didn't even play the game. Well, played enough.
I played enough. They controlled like freaking ass.
Anyway, I pulled up the trailer for Umbrella Corps and give you a look at that. Also, don't worry about volume. You can always cut this part out.
Yeah, I can.
See, that looks good.
Shit.
Umbrella Corps.
I'd play that game.
Mm-hmm.
I'd play the shit out of that game.
And I think one of the reasons why people are so, I guess fans of the series are pissed is because, like, look, the video's got, like, 3K thumbs up, but then, like, 4K thumbs down. And I think the reason why is because this was announced on Resident Evil's 25th anniversary, and people were expecting something Resident Evil with the horror aspect of it, but it doesn't really have that. But then again, yeah.
Honestly, it seems like they're trying to reboot, what is it, the Raccoon City one?
Yeah, Raccoon City.
I'm fine with that. There were gameplay bugs and stuff, and the story, from what I've seen, wasn't that deep, and you could pretty much run through the game pretty fucking quick. But with this, it seems like it's a bit more in depth, and the co-op seems a bit more front and center, and it looks like you can also switch between first and third person, which I don't have a problem with, but that's gonna piss some people off, which I really don't fucking care, because it's an evolution of gameplay. Like, look at Metal Gear Solid again. With the new one, you can do the same thing. Switch between first and third person for better aiming of your gun. Which, if they didn't have it, that game would fucking, for certain sections, would probably be nearly unplayable. From what I've seen so far of Metal Gear Solid 5, from what I've played, versus a few side ops, and I've watched you play a few side ops and a few missions. I can't imagine that game without first person aiming.
Well, actually, it's always had first person aiming.
Has it?
Yeah, it has.
Okay, so literally they're taking a page out of fucking Metal Gear Solid book at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I don't know what came out first. It was Metal Gear Solid. Well, Metal Gear came out first, and then it transitioned to Solid. But even then, I think.
Well, do you know when the first mechanic like that was?
No.
You don't know the first game it appears in?
No, first person.
Yeah.
Oh, well, for first person shooting, that's Doom, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean the first person shooting mechanic in Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, yeah, no, the first person mechanic was the first one, the first Metal Gear Solid.
So PS1. So
yeah, PS1. So I think with PS1, that's when there were third person games, and they were like, oh, people need to be precise with their shots. That's when they started doing that.
I don't have a problem with it. It makes it easier, because especially in games where it's all about conserving ammo, that makes a lot of fucking sense.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since in the early games, you can't fucking... Well, in the early games, it would have made more sense for the original Resident Evil games to have that, because you can't fucking move while shooting. I remember trying to line up shots in that game. I think I went through an entire clip trying to kill one zombie the first time I played it, because it was just like... I was like, this is like controlling a fucking tank. But less accurate. You know, it was like trying to control a tank while you had... I'm trying to think of a funny way to put this. Or a... Not a very... That's what I'm looking for. I can't think of the word. Either way, the games would have been better with that, but honestly, I can't see a reason why people shouldn't enjoy this game. It honestly, like, it looks fun. That's all that matters. if they came out with another Splinter Cell tomorrow that was similar to that, I wouldn't fucking care.
Also, when has a Resident Evil story ever been like really good?
Front and center.
There's like the one spin-off game people really like, but honestly, when you think about it, the stories for these games have not been that great. Like, they're fun. I imagine, like, when you finally get used to it, they're like fun games to play, and eventually you get to a point where it's sort of like, ooh, this is kind of creepy, and then a zombie will pop out, and they're like, oh, that freaked me out. Whoa! But eventually it would get to the point, okay, I'm gonna keep playing. But also, again, to make that type of judgment now versus when the game first came out. Oh, crap.
You lost your train of thought, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. That's a good thing you can edit this. I should decide to leave it in.
Probably will.
What was I saying? But, see, with the thing, like, people, like, I can see people saying is like, oh, well, you shouldn't judge the game like that because that's what it was like when it came out, but...
Even now, you can't take games from back then and try to put them in today's times because, A, you've played them. B, we've become so desensitized to shit like this, like, it doesn't, like, you can't... Like, I mean, maybe once, like, a great example, spoiler alert, in Batman Arkham Knight, there's that one sequence with Man-Bat the first time you run into him where you pop up out of nowhere and he just fucking screams at you and you're just like, shit.
Yeah, the jump scare.
After you play through it again, you kind of know, you're kind of expecting it. Same thing with, what was it, Dead Island. First time the zombie spins you around and grabs you, it startles you.
Also, it was really goofy, too. It was like, I remember, like, the story for the first one being really goofy, but what set, like, I guess what made it scary was the music and the atmosphere and whatnot. But even then,
what are we talking about?
Resident Evil.
Resident Evil, okay.
Yeah, Resident Evil. And, you know, like, thinking about it now, like, you want a game to last. Like, there are some games that are from, like, 8-bit days that still hold up, that are actually a lot of fun to play. But, like I said, over time, the mechanics improved. Like, say, for example, with, you know, Street Fighter V coming out next year. You know, I've played Street Fighter 4 also. I'm not good at it, but I've still enjoyed it.
Fuck, me and him have been playing Street Fighter 2 for the Super Famicom at one of our buddies' houses recently. And, like, compared to, like, Street Fighter 4, like, I mean, it's still alright, but I mean, like, the mechanics, the fighting system, it's okay, but, like, it doesn't hold up to today. But with the newer stuff, it's a lot more playable. Like, if you asked pretty much anyone to go back and who's only played the more recent ones from our generation, from, I don't know, 4, 3, somewhere in there, and I'll go play Street Fighter, or Fighting Street, which was originally called on TurboGrafx 16, or go play Street Fighter 2, the first one. It was garbage compared to today. Like,
I was actually going to say I was having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Because
like,
that's
it
where I
still
was
is
going.
fun.
Like, if you go back to that game, certain classic games are still fun, where other certain classic games are absolutely shit.
Oh yeah, it is. That's true. But like, it is still playable. It is still somewhat fun. But like, it is so easy to lose in that game. Like, it is ridiculously easy to lose. That, and there's also no way, as far as we know. Plus, we're playing a Japanese version of the game. To pull it moveless or anything. So if you've never played any of them, you have no fucking idea what you're doing. It's just spin the D-pad in random directions and hit a button.
Well, that was the thing about classic games too, though, was the fact that there wasn't. Well, I guess the pros and cons of gaming now and back then was now there's a lot of hand holding and telling you what direction to go in and all this other stuff. But back then it was all like, okay, here's a simple objective. You go figure it out. And see, I think that's where that's how, like, a lot of people spent a long time on those games because of how short they were. But the process of trying to figure something out took forever. Like, I remember when I played Earthbound, like, when I decided to get that on my Wii U, and I was playing that, and I was like, where do I go? And, like, the map they give you isn't very helpful. I was like, this map is terrible. But I was like, well, I guess I better explore everywhere.
You know, I had a similar experience. It wasn't recent, but I remember as a kid playing Nightmare Creations. I never got super far in that game, but I remember a couple years ago when my Nintendo 64 was still working, I decided to go back and play it again. And I was very much like, where the fuck do I go? I remember part of it. Like, very, very few. That's another game that controlled like ass, but where it had similar mechanics if you couldn't move and do anything. But I remember playing through that game, and I remember tried playing through it years later, and I was just like, where the fuck am I going? What the fuck am I supposed to do? I'm just going to wander around and hopefully something happens, because that was like one of the first games I can think of that actually had like semi-cutscene sort of things, where you'd be walking somewhere and all of a sudden the gameplay would stop, it would go through a small loading thing, and then it'd be like, alright, this is happening over here. Go find where the fuck it is. Oh, okay. And I spent 10 minutes trying to fucking find the place because you get lost because there's no map in that game that I can remember. But, whatever. Actually, no, that's a game I would love to see remade today, is Nightmare Creatures.
Yeah.
I would love to see that remade. That game would look beautiful in high definition with new mechanics.
Going back to Earthbound, because I never, Earthbound is Mother 2 in the Mother series, because that's what it's called in Japan, is Mother, right?
Yeah.
So when I played that, I was like, oh, cool, Earthbound, this is like the first game in the series. No, I did some research on it, and it's like the second game, and I was like, oh, what's the first one?
What's with that? Like, half the Japanese games, we get the second one or something first. Like, Final Fantasy was the same way, where we got, what was it? Final Fantasy was actually, Final Fantasy 2 or something?
I think it was actually the third one that we got over here, I believe. But it might have been the second one, and that was called the first game. And then when they released the first game, they gave it another title. And then I think as time went on, when they re-released it over here, they were like, okay, we'll call it Final Fantasy 1 now. Because, it's the first Final Fantasy game. But yeah, no, I think the thing with that type of stuff, though, is licensing issues and then also translations of the game.
They take longer. Another good example.
But not anymore now, because usually the time to wait...
Throw it in Google Translate, you're done.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not that issue. You might end up mistranslating something. I don't know.
That's fine. Who cares?
Yeah, that's... Alrighty, then.
We'll end up with more stuff like, all your base belong to us.
All your base belong to us. But also there's an issue with censorship. Censorship. Yeah, there we go. As well, and also,
that was more Nintendo side.
That is true.
You don't really see it with Sony and stuff.
No, you kind of do, because I remember there was something with Square Enix when they released Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, and it was with the character Aqua, I believe her name was, and see what they did in the Japanese version of it with her back. It's just like her bare back with a ribbon across of it, but in the North American version, she's given a top that covers her back and whatnot, and people are like,
well, don't forget it is technically also a Walt Disney game. In Japan, that's more acceptable. Over here, Walt Disney's very let's protect the child from possibly every fucking thing ever.
That is true.
I don't think necessarily it was Sony. It was probably more Walt Disney side.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say anything definitive about that, but that's my theory on it. Something else we were talking before we decided to record this was gameplay stories.
Yeah.
And the way gameplay's evolved, we were talking about how Metal Gear Solid 5 was in development for 5 years, and we felt like the game should have been a bit longer. And they tried to fluff it out as much as they could with forcing you to wait for upgrades and filling gaps with side ops, which... side stuff should be there, but, the main game should itself take at least 20-something hours, and the side stuff add on, a bunch of shit where you don't have to complete it, or if you really wanted to, you could just run through the game with, still getting upgrades at a fairly decent rate, instead of being like, alright, we're going to force you to wait 2 hours for this upgrade, go do shit.
Exactly. And see, a lot of people, too, are like, I played the game for 60 hours, and I'm only at 20%, and I'm having a blast, and, That's good. That's good. You're getting your money's worth out of it, but when you really think about it, if you were to strip the game of some of the elements to just story, honestly, you could probably beat this game in 12 hours.
Yeah, that was my, we were sitting there at breakfast just talking, and I was like, if you just ran through this game, getting sort of base upgrades, just trying to, upgrading what you need as you need it, you could probably run through the game if you're skipping cutscenes and stuff, and, somewhere in the early close double digits, somewhere between 12 and 15 hours. That's a conservative guess, but, you could probably do it. And then you spend another fucking 30 hours trying to fucking do everything else. But
yeah, trying to 100% it. But honestly, I don't really see a lot of the casual gamers who got this game 100%ing it.
No. If anything, they're probably going to get pissed off halfway through the game and give up. Like, I mean...
Or not even get pissed off, just be like, well, I've beaten the story, and all that's left are the side jobs, so I don't really care anymore.
Like, I'm a casual observer to that series, and when Phantom Pain, Ground Zeroes was free on PSN, I downloaded it, I did the first sort of, like, main thing, and I was like, well, I don't fucking care. I kind of have an idea of what's going on leading up to Phantom Pain, so whatever. I had no interest in doing it. I think I tried running through it once just to sort of see what the side ops were about, and I was just like, I don't fucking care. There's no point. I have no idea what's really going on. I have a decent idea from what people have tried explaining to me for the last 15 years. Is that game series makes no fucking sense.
It really doesn't. It's also a very convoluted story.
You know you fucked up somewhere, and I know there's going to be people who are going to probably scream at me for this, but you know you fucked up somewhere when you need to bring flowcharts into the equation and, like, map where shit happens.
And also add in, like, pages to tell you about the backstory of the game.
Yeah, something else we were discussing was that we really disliked what we felt like they should have done more was, and where they fucked up was, he reads the forums for the game as he plays the game. People would go, I don't understand what's going on, and someone would go into the forums and just be like, hey, you need to listen to this tape specifically to understand what's going on in the story. I feel like they should have sort of taken more of the Arkham Asylum route, where they should have just put, like, everything they needed to in the story, and then use those tapes to sort of, not so much fill in, like, gaps in the story, but kind of add to the story. Like, in Arkham Asylum, you didn't have to get the tapes.
Mm-hmm.
But you did. It added to the story. It was like, here's some backstory about some of the characters.
It added to the story, but it didn't...
subtract from it.
Exactly, and that's what I feel like with the tapes do in Metal Gear Solid 5, because you could play that entire game without listening to a single tape. You would have a somewhat decent idea of what was going on, but if you didn't listen to those tapes, honestly, you won't know fuck all what's really going on with the background. It'll be like, they didn't really explain that. Well, they did in tape number 20. Or it's all like, well, I missed that detail. It's like, it's in tape number 52. But, like, really, Kojima, what he was planning with it was all like, well, I'll cut up the cutscenes and put in gameplay, and it's just... No, that's the reason why... That's also that's a love and hate thing with the Metal Gear series, was the cutscenes and the codec scenes and whatnot. Was those, like, 30-minute cutscenes. Like, I enjoyed those. Like, some people didn't, but I did. And then now you have these cassette tapes that feel really out of place. Because the only time I think the idea with those was to listen to those while you're sitting in, like, your helicopter waiting for your weapon to develop, or when you're on side ops. But whenever I tried to listen to those tapes, also another thing, too, that I'm about to get to, is that whenever you listen to those tapes during a main mission, or, like, whenever you're listening to those tapes on a side op, when somebody talks that isn't in the tape audio quiets down and goes to the person who's talking. Or say it's a guard who talks and whatnot, and then it'll focus on that, and it'll be like, wait, what'd he say? And then after you kill everybody, the tape's already done, and you gotta go back and read it and whatnot, or not read it, listen to it. And it's like, well, it's very annoying. And, like, with some stuff, like with the cassette tape stuff, it's just like, like, I feel like there could have been more cutscenes and whatnot, and, like, with...
Sorry, we're lighting cigarettes.
You could just cut that part out and clip it together, but anyway, with, but I feel like they could have incorporated the tapes into cutscenes, and especially with 5 years. 5 years and an $8 million budget for this game.
I thought they went over the budget as well.
Yeah, I believe they did, and 5 years and the game wasn't finished, and don't give me that, but they were working on the engine and stuff, because that's why you have teams within your teams to work on this game.
Even then, at 5 years, like, fucking there are games that are in development that are just as long, if not longer, and have more fleshed out cohesive stories that are done in like 2-3 years.
Yeah.
5 years, that's ridiculous. A great example of a game that took forever to come out and was garbage, Duke Nukem Forever. It was in development for 10 years. And from what I've heard also is halfway through development, or several times through development, Kojima was just like, fuck, let's change the story around. That was basically what kept happening with Duke Nukem, and it fucked it up. They're just kind of like, let's switch the story, and then they'd start working on it, change something, have to rework a bunch of shit, and then a new system would come out, and they'd have to keep doing it over and over and over again and updating the game and shit. Recently that happened with the game that developed, Shadow of the Colossus. They're developing it, trying to get it up for PS3, and then the PS4 dropped, and so they had to start reworking the game again. Which, whatever, but we don't know too much about that game. I think there's a bit of, like, a very sort of brief synopsis sort of thing of what the base plot is.
Mm-hmm. And they also, like, actually there's no plot idea. There's just a boy and some griffin creature. And, like...
yeah, it's extremely basic, so if there is a story...
what they released for it was a gameplay trailer, which was, like 5 to, 10 minutes long, I believe. And, like, you get a basic idea of the mechanics that are going to be involved in that game, and that's about it.
So, like, if they're reworking story, adding a story, removing story, we don't know. Which is good, because, like, with Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes, they kind of gave you an idea of what the story was about for the next one. Which, whatever, but then we still had, almost a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah.
Between those two?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're releasing that early... to get people hyped for the game, you're going to run out of hype before that game launches.
Yeah.
And then with the trailers they released, from what you were telling me, is that whenever a game comes out that I'm vaguely interested in, I don't watch trailers. I'll maybe watch, a teaser or something, just before I buy the game, so I can make my final decision. Before I bought Arkham Knight, I think it was, a month before I bought Arkham Knight, that was the first time I'd ever watched the trailer.
Yeah.
I'd watched the very early teaser where they're kind of like, alright, here's some of the stuff. And this is how the game engine runs.
Yeah.
That was it. But, any of the actual trailers for the game that showed gameplay, I didn't touch.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't want anything spoiled.
Yeah. And see, that was the thing with Metal Gear Solid 5 was, with the trailers they were releasing, they showed a majority of the cutscenes. And even then, some of the stuff that was shown in the trailers, you didn't see in the game itself. And also certain events in the game that were portrayed as, cutscenes weren't cutscenes. There were events that were happening in real time in the game, and people are like, what happened to this cutscene and whatnot. Spoiler alert for when you get to this one part with the one kid that's shown in Metal Gear, Eli. You get a cutscene that's showing him, and in the trailer that's all here's this kid and he's sitting on a chair, but when you get to that part, depending on how you approach him, the cutscene won't start. It'll the first time I played that, it went immediately into a fight with the kid. But with my second playthrough of it, and because I decided to walk up these steps, it started a cutscene, and I was like, oh, so there is a cutscene for this.
We should also mention at the time of this recording, it is September 19th.
Yeah.
And the game's been out for 3 weeks?
Yeah, 3 weeks.
And he's already on a second playthrough, and there are some people who are at 20%. He's done all the story and a majority of the side ops at this point, through both playthroughs.
But then, again, I have, no life. But
either way...
But that's not the point.
That's not the point. There are some people who play the game probably about as much as you do, and aren't nearly as far as you. That's the point we're trying to make at one point, is... if you know what you're doing... there isn't a problem. You can run through that game fairly quickly. How long was your first playthrough? 30, 40 hours?
No, because I was doing all the side-ups and stuff. I got to, 80 hours.
80 hours? To complete basically almost 100% the game? Other than, getting S rankings and stuff? No,
not to 100% it, but to complete the main story. And all that was left were basically side-ups and then rehashes of games that... rehashes of missions that you've already played, except for their... set difficulties or certain game modes.
Yeah, then you've also fucking developed half the shit in the game too.
Exactly.
So you gotta wait for that shit to develop.
Honestly, I don't... with Metal Gear Solid 5 getting 10s across all the reviewer sites, I honestly don't think that game deserves a 10. The gameplay is solid, but the story is just...
still fucking all over the place, like every other Metal Gear game.
Exactly, and it's actually supposed to be the last Metal Gear game.
I just recently seen, towards the end of the game, we finished one of the last side ops? We finished one of the last side ops, and I haven't seen, the complete ending of the game, but he told me what it was, because I asked. And honestly, it does feel like it's set to have more. It seems like halfway through the game, Kojima was like, fuck it, let's make a Metal Gear Solid 6. Like, that's honestly what it feels like from what I've seen. There's room for more. Like, at the end of the last side op, it involves quiet, and the way it ends, you're just kind of like, well, I want closure on this. Because there really isn't any. Like, it just kind of... It's kind of like this cowboy just kind of rides off into the sunset. Well, not even that. He doesn't really ride off into the sunset. It's like he walks up to his next enemy and just goes, "Hi, I'm here," and then the game sort of just ends, and you're just like, "Well, fucking what happens next?" Like, we now have a section of story that's not completed, which apparently was another problem with that game, where they cut out chunks of story and just kind of stitched the game back together, fucking a la Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And there are people who are wanting certain parts of the story to be released that weren't in the game to be released as DLC, which, whatever. Fucking the game already costs $80, $90, and fucking, depending on what version of the game you bought, upwards of $100. What's another, like, $10, $20? Because we know they're not going to release it for, like, $5, $10.
Yeah.
Or probably going to be friggin' Destiny price, where it's, like, $30, $40, $50.
Well, I don't know, maybe in the $25 price range, or maybe, like, the $15 price range.
Depending on how much they add into it.
Yeah, but still, it's just like, come on, you had 5 years.
You had no reason not to have that story completed. You had 5 fucking years.
Exactly, and, like, with this, like, if you've played other Metal Gear games, and then you play this one, you'll be like, wow, the story is not done. It doesn't feel done at all. Like, the characters don't feel as fleshed out as they did in the previous ones. And, like, I'm gonna get them. Like, I plan on getting the Saga collection of the Metal Gear games, too, so we'll play through that, and when we do that, we'll make another episode, and we'll probably come back to this topic.
At some point, we're also planning on doing these podcasts with video game footage in the background while we go through and talk about the game as we're playing it. And, the parts we like, parts we dislike, stuff like that.
But yeah, I guess, so we're coming towards the end of the episode now, and,
We are?
Yeah. It's been going on for a while now. Oh, can't keep him here forever. But
I don't mind.
The thing I think about it is, though, the thing I think about it, a boot. Oot and a boot. I'm rambling now, but closing thoughts about everything is just that, like, gameplay evolves, but the story shouldn't suffer for it, and I feel like that's what happens.
That's what's been happening for the most part. I mean, sort of the opposite's happened with GTA, where as the gameplay has evolved and gotten a lot better for the most part, the story's somewhat gotten better. Like, you're not just kind of going through the story being like, alright, let's get to the point where we have free roam and kill everything and there's no more story. Like, with Grand Theft Auto 5, like, I was finding myself actually enjoying the story, whereas with Vice City, I was kind of enjoying it. With San Andreas, it was hit and miss. At points, I enjoyed it. Other parts, it was kind of like, fucking whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care. I just want all the islands unlocked. Which half the time, I just locked my wanted level at nothing and just kind of did what I wanted. So I could explore all the islands.
Yep.
But with Grand Theft Auto, it's a great example of gameplay evolving and people sort of embracing it, where they're not just like, because it's gotten better and everything's got... I mean, the engine's slightly... I mean, compared to GTA 4, I mean, I liked that engine a lot better, because you still have part of that engine, but, like, I liked how the cars crumpled a lot easier, and it had a lot more soft body physics.
Yeah.
Whereas Grand Theft Auto 5, you can just ram your car, like, 150 miles an hour into a wall, and there's just a tiny dent.
Yeah. Or there'll be, like, a small bump if you run into traffic. Well, meanwhile, in 4, there'd be, like, this big, amazing crash, but not so much in 5. But it's still...
That was one thing I missed.
Yeah, but it's still a
The one thing I did
game.
miss,
No
I
pun
remember I played Grand Theft Auto 5, and then I went back and played 4 at one point. I'd seen 5, I was watching gameplay videos of 5, because I was like, oh, fucking Grand Theft Auto is probably going to be too much of a story in it, but I was wrong at that point, because I didn't know anything about the game until you bought it for my birthday. I went back and played 4, and I was just like, this game is really dark. I didn't notice that the first time.
Yeah, no, that was like one of the first things I noticed about Grand Theft Auto 4 was how
grimy
it was.
I didn't notice it at first, because I don't know if it was settings on my TV or something, but the first time I played it, it wasn't too bad. But as I got and played other games and eventually went back to it, I was like, why is this game like I'm looking through freaking sunglasses, like totally blacked out sunglasses? I'm glad they fixed that.
Mm-hmm.
But I missed the soft body collisions and stuff. Other games that I wish they kept stuff like that was a great example of it is fucking Need for Speed.
Yeah.
In the recent games, they've cut out a lot of the stuff. That's another example of like gameplay mechanics gone wrong of evolution. Is they cut out a lot of what made Need for Speed good. Like you no longer have free roam for the most part. It's all basically track based. I don't know about the new ones. I haven't really played any of the really new ones, but it's all generally track based. And same thing with one of the things that made Gran Turismo great was early on in the series you could basically swap out individual parts to make your car better.
Yeah.
Can't really do that in the newer ones.
Yeah.
Forza took that and fucking ran with it, and now it's one of the greatest car sims on the planet. I don't know about the newest ones, I don't have an Xbox One, but from what I've seen, it's still just as good.
Yeah.
Gameplay evolution can either go right or wrong.
Yeah.
Gran Turismo's done it wrong. Metal Gear, it's evolving in a way that's okay, but the story's starting to suffer because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And because Hideo Kojima's just, he doesn't fucking know what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Same thing with the guy who makes fucking Final Fantasy.
Oh my god, Final Fantasy. Anyway, that's another topic for another day. This has been...
Let's keep talking about it.
No, we gotta keep content. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we'll get to it. But anyway, this has been Nerdflash with Tim
And Tyler. And look forward to me complaining about Final Fantasy at some point.
Oh, that's gonna be fun. Anyway, peace out, have a good one, and all that other jazz.
Oh yeah, don't forget to check out Xavier's channel, who's not with us because he lives somewhere else and he's currently not here and we don't have internet at this place, so
Yeah.
hopefully at some point he'll be able to join us again.
Yeah.
Have a good one.